Most rabbis would never dare say this. For centuries, Judaism has drawn a hard line. Jesus was out. His name, his teachings, his followers, off limits. But in 1757, one Orthodox rabbi broke that silence. In a public letter, he wrote something no one expected. Jesus came not to destroy the Torah, but to strengthen it. He didn't condemn Jesus. He didn't call Christians idolaters. In fact, what he said was so bold that some Jewish communities tried to bury it. Who was this rabbi? And why would he say something that sounds almost Christian? Please stay with me, because what you're about to see might change the way we see Jesus and Judaism forever. And if you want to learn more biblical and Christian truths, I invite you to subscribe. So who was this rabbi? His name was Rabbi Jacob Emden. And no, he wasn't a fringe mystic or a theological rebel. He was one of the most respected Orthodox rabbis of the 18th century. The son of the legendary Chacham Tzvi, Rabbi Emden was born into a family of towering Torah scholarship. He mastered the Talmud, authored countless works on Jewish law, and fiercely defended Jewish tradition against distortion. He was best known for his relentless war against false messianic movements, particularly the followers of Sabbatai Zevi, whose deception had misled thousands of Jews. Rabbi Emden saw himself as a guardian of Jewish integrity, someone willing to stand alone if truth demanded it. And often he did. Independent, razor-sharp, and utterly fearless, Rabbi Emden spoke aloud what others only whispered. He wasn't trying to merge faiths. He wasn't a liberal. He was a devoted son of Israel. And that is exactly what makes his defense of Jesus so astonishing. Now let's look at what Rabbi Jacob Emden actually wrote that stunned most people. In 1757, in a letter called Seder Olam, Emden made a series of statements that have echoed in quiet corners of history, but were rarely brought to light. He began with this: "The Nazarene brought a double kindness to the world." It's already startling, isn't it? He calls Jesus a bringer of chesed, kindness, not deceit. Not heresy, as most rabbis claim, but kindness. Then he explains what that means as he wrote, "First, he removed idolatry from many nations." Here, Emden believed that before Jesus, the Gentile world was drowning in paganism, worshipping stones, stars, and emperors. But through Jesus, they were introduced to the God of Israel. Even if imperfectly, even if mixed with Christian theology, Emden saw it as a step toward truth. He didn't stop there, but added, "Second, he imposed moral behavior and law on them." In other words, Jesus gave Gentiles a moral framework, a sense of divine accountability. He didn't just introduce a deity, he taught the nations how to live. This, to Emden, was no small thing. It was a fulfillment of the basic ethical commands all humans are accountable to, what Judaism calls the Noahide laws. Then comes the line that separates Emden from almost every rabbi before or after him. He wrote, "He, Jesus, did not come to make the Jews rebel against the Torah. Rather, his intention was only directed at the Gentiles." To Emden, Jesus wasn't a Jewish revolutionary trying to replace the Torah. He wasn't calling Israel to abandon God's law. Instead, Jesus' mission was for the nations, to lead Gentiles into a form of godliness suited to them, without imposing the full weight of Torah observance meant for Israel. And finally, echoing Jesus' own words in Matthew 5 verse 17, Emden writes, "He came not to destroy the Torah, but to strengthen it." That's not just a poetic flourish. Emden meant it. He believed Jesus never opposed the Torah itself, but actually affirmed its moral and spiritual authority. Of course, Emden still upheld the unique covenant between God and the Jewish people. He didn't see Christianity as a substitute for Judaism, but he did see it as a useful, even divinely guided path for the Gentile world. To say this openly, as an Orthodox rabbi in the 18th century, took more than boldness. It took intellectual honesty and a willingness to acknowledge Jesus as a true figure. So what was the response from the rabbinic community at the time? Well, Rabbi Emden's letter didn't cause public riots, but it didn't need to. The shockwave was quieter and perhaps more telling. Over time, many of his statements about Jesus were quietly ignored. Some later editions of his works left them out altogether. Others buried them in footnotes without context or explanation. It was easier to pretend he never said it than to confront what it might mean. Why? Because what Emden wrote didn't just challenge a few theological assumptions, it disrupted an entire framework. For centuries, the line between Judaism and Christianity wasn't just about belief, it was about identity, survival, and history. That line was protected fiercely, especially after centuries of misunderstanding. But Emden's words blurred that line. He didn't speak as a Christian sympathizer. He spoke as a loyal Jew. And yet, what he said aligned almost perfectly with what Jesus himself declared. I did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. That's why his letter is so dangerous. It raises a question most aren't ready to ask. What if Jesus didn't break the Torah at all? What if he upheld it faithfully, completely, and only aimed to open the door for the nations to know Israel's God? For Christians, Emden's letter is like a window into how Jesus might look when stripped of centuries of politics and polemics. Not as a rebel or heretic, but as a Torah-affirming figure misunderstood by his own people. But let me be clear, Emden wasn't endorsing Jesus as the Messiah. He didn't believe in his divinity, his resurrection, or his role as Savior. His understanding was partial, fragmented. From a Christian perspective, he saw in part, but not in full. And yet, what makes his words worth paying attention to isn't that he got everything right. It is that, from within Judaism, he got closer to the truth than most were willing to admit. As Christians, we do not believe that Jesus was just a moral teacher for the nations. We believe he is the Messiah of Israel, the fulfillment of the Torah, and the Son of the living God. His mission wasn't just to lead the Gentiles away from idolatry, it was to reconcile all humanity to God through his death and resurrection. So, in conclusion, what you've just heard isn't a theory. It's a real quote from a real Orthodox rabbi buried in a letter most people have never read. It's a thread of history that was almost forgotten, quietly pushed aside because it didn't fit the narrative. But it's still there, waiting to be seen. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Maybe it's time to ask different questions, to re-examine old assumptions. Maybe it's time to see Jesus not as a rebel against the Torah, but as its most faithful son. And Rabbi Emden may have seen it first. Will you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.